All right, we are back for episode. I should have counted, Danny. This is my
I think
issue every time.
14.
I think it's I think 14, maybe 15 actually.
Yeah, 14 or 15.
I think so. It's been a while. As I posted the other day, welcome back to the Minnesota Due Process Coach. It has been what feels like a long 3 weeks. I think it's been 3 weeks since I last posted, but also a busy 3 weeks of ending the school year and then taking a vacation and coming back and ending another school year with another district. And now we're kind of in the home stretch, it feels like in the
Mhm.
middle of June. I never thought we would say that because we got out so late in the district that Danny works in. But I
Yeah.
am joined today by my good friend Dani, and she has a really unique position in, I don't think it matters if we say your district on here, in Lakeville Public Schools, within the special education department. And I'm gonna kind of let her explain what that is, but I wanted Dani to come on to really talk about what that position looks like within her district, because I think it's something that other districts could obviously implement and I think would be really beneficial, and maybe they already are. Or something just to think about if you have those extra FTEs of what you could do to really help support teachers more, especially with our growing behavior needs. But I think outside of that, Dani does so much more than just behavior and what her title says. That I'm going to kind of let you talk about what your job is.
Okay.
Two full
I was
questions.
just trying to pull up my actual job description
I
because I
don't know if
do.
that has anything to do with what you do. I feel like you do so much. And then
Yeah.
your background. But I think just a little bit of background so people understand too, like the depth of your job is that Lakeville has around, I think it's like 12,000 students now. And
Mhm.
within that 12,000 students, there's about 2,600 students that are serviced under special education. And that's across multiple buildings. So Danny's
Yeah.
not just a building specific. She is district wide. So when we're thinking about that, it's just this massive undertaking. And obviously it's not just you, and we'll talk about that, but just the expansion of what your job is. And it's not just,
Mhm.
100 students that maybe you're servicing, or even just like a small center-based classroom. We're really talking about the whole district wide of our special education department. So Danny, I'll let you kind of talk about your job.
Okay. My background a little bit. So I did 8 years in center based. I had an autism classroom at the elementary level. Absolutely loved it. Love center based classrooms and the connections that we make there with students. But as we were growing and I was looking for a little bit different because I had started my admin license for my director's license. So I was looking to do a little bit more outside of the classroom. I had the opportunity to become an instructional behavior coach in the district. So I just finished my third year doing that. Um, and it really is a whole like gamut of things that I do. Every day is new. Every day is a little bit different. I really support staff and a lot of students, specifically, I think around behaviors, which encompasses so much, right? Like the behavior in itself, the behavior within the classroom, the behavior planning behind the scenes, right? That we do to make behavior plans to figure out what is the function of this behavior? How can we support that? What skills are lacking that we need to teach? How can we reinforce those skills? But I also work a lot to support teachers in thinking about like their classroom setups, their instructional approaches, what visuals might help support themselves and students, and helping create those. I also support due process to some degree, helping like either rep meetings or help people like think about goals to write and how we word those goals to really target the skills that we're working on. Um, I don't know there, and then all of my other little kind of side projects, side thoughts that I love to think about and try to envision.
Mhm.
Um, I'm also a CPI trainer in the district. I do a lot with that. Um, I don't know, I'm probably missing some, but I feel like those are kind of like the big things that I do in the day to day.
Yeah, I think you support with like functional behavior assessments and positive behavior support plans. I think the biggest thing I see too is that data collection that you really help
Mhm.
teachers with, because I think that's something that a lot of these center-based teachers struggle with.
I
Um,
forgot to mention that, and that's where that's where my brain loves to live. I love to help people like think about how do we collect the data, like right, what behaviors are actually happening, when are they happening, and then yeah, like really looking at it to figure out how do we how do we make a plan from what the data is telling us.
right. I think that's a huge piece of what you do, and I'll brag on you a little bit. I think you can give Danny this extravagant, I don't even say extravagant, this idea. That's my favorite thing to do. I'm like, Danny, I have this idea and this day this lives in my head. And then she
Uh-huh.
makes a beautiful spreadsheet that you never knew was possible with all the things.
I love
Like this
them.
magical thing you can ever think. And I think Amy would say the same thing, our former coworker, Amy Raffleson. It was like you just say, Danny, this, and this, and you make the most amazing spreadsheets. And I think you do that for teachers too. And I think that is a really important piece of what you do. I've, been in some of the classrooms that you've worked with those teachers where you've built those data collection systems and those point sheet systems for
Yeah,
those teachers to really collect the data. And I think that's a huge undertaking in itself because I think that is
yeah,
missing sometimes from those rooms, um, because they're so busy.
yeah.
There's so much going on, and that data is so important.
I remember when I started, I was not a great data taker, right? Because you're right, the rooms get so busy. You're
Yeah,
in it in the day to day and the teaching and the independent skills and managing the coming and going of all the other activities. Um, but as I've been able to step out a little bit and support people in taking data and creating systems that hopefully make it easier, um, it's just been like eye-opening too about how important and how like powerful some of that data can be to really hone in on like when our behaviors are happening, what are they communicating, and really communicate that to other staff, to administrators, to families about what that means and how we're going to support the student.
right. And make those decisions from there and how we use that data moving forward. How about
Yeah.
you walk us through every day is different for Danny.
It
Every
sure
I should say every like hour is different for you
is.
of what that looks like. But I think it'd be important for people to understand like kind of what your day to day looks like, even though it is different every single day, like
Yeah.
what that typically should look like or could look like.
Yeah. So most of the time, I have teachers or case managers who kind of request some additional support. Either they need some brainstorming time, they need like an observation of like, okay, I'm not seeing this or I am seeing this. Can you come in and, like do an observation, tell me what you see, and let's talk about it. Or they know they need to collect some data. They want to collect the data, but they're just not really sure about like what data to collect or how to set it up in a way that works, especially for students who are maybe moving, and have different staff interacting to get accurate data. So I often meet with those teachers first, right? And I don't even know that I can give you a day because it depends. It just depends on who's requesting support or kind of what behaviors are needing support, right? If they're bigger behaviors, I guess, like more significant, maybe physical behaviors. I often try to put eyes on and be present in those buildings more often, um, to help gather that data, to help make those observations about how can we support differently, right? Like what is this kiddo communicating to us that we maybe need to adjust how adults are interacting or supporting. Um, so often I'm in the elementaries. Um, we've had we've had growth, right, in our physical behaviors from kiddos this year. It feels like a lot of needs around that. So I feel like a lot of my time has been around helping brainstorm those pieces, and helping case managers figure out what to do or kind of make a plan for them, and sometimes even creating that plan with them and writing it down or putting it into kind of like a visual flow chart almost, and then also helping share that out to other staff who are supporting that same student. So I know my day to day is ever different. I try to spend, I try to do like 2 buildings in a day so I can really spend
Uh,
time in buildings with teams and focus on them. But sometimes I'm, hitting 3 or 4 buildings a day because it's just so busy everywhere.
right. You get those crisis calls, or like there's somebody that needs something, or they need supports in that moment, or maybe in the next hour, or things like that. I think it's important too that so Dani is not the only instructional behavior coach that we have. Or should we that you have in Lakeville. There are 2 others that
Mhm.
help support early childhood through high school. And
Mhm.
obviously each of you is doing something different. You had mentioned, right, that you do the CPI training, which is huge for
Yeah,
districts. Do you guys all do that, all 3 of you, or is it just you?
2 of us. All 3 of us are trained, but 2 of us are trained trainers.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think maybe explaining what that is for people, what CPI is, because I don't know if not everyone uses CPI, and I think that's okay. There's multiple different things out there, and everybody has to choose what best fits them. But I think CPI is pretty universal.
Yeah.
Maybe giving a little bit of explanation around what that is.
So CPI is kind of a de-escalation and a disengagement and restrictive procedure program that we utilize. It really looks at training staff in how to de-escalate situations when students are dysregulated or upset. But we also train people then in if a student does make contact with you, how to try to disengage that contact if it's unwanted or aggressive or they're not able to follow those verbal redirections. But then we also look at restrictive procedures, right? If students are just being immediately unsafe to themselves, to others, if they're having really big risky behaviors. So we train staff in how to interact with students when they're dysregulated, how to try to de-escalate situations. And then we also support the paperwork piece behind that when we need to report when, a bigger restrictive procedure has occurred, and how to communicate sometimes that with families and other staff too.
Yeah, I think a big piece of what you do too is that family connection along with the staff connection. Because I think of when you say instructional behavior coach, we always think of like instructional coaches,
Yeah.
and seeing that difference, I think, is so important for districts. Like there is a need for an instructional coach, and there are those in Lakeville as well that are really supporting teachers in their instruction and their day to day, and really ensuring that the kids are getting the curriculum. And then also there's this instructional behavioral piece that I
Hmm.
think a lot more teachers need. And it's not just in center based anymore. I feel like a lot of it is happening in resource as well, that they need that instruction, that coaching, that one to really help them understand. Because I think what used to happen, and you can speak to this too, is that it was just kind of a here's some tools.
Hmm.
Hope it goes well. Or teachers would get those at the beginning of the year, I think when I just first started teaching, and it was like, here's some things. Hope it works out for you. But I think now with having an instructional behavioral coach, that's someone that can go in and work side by side with staff, which I think they really appreciate. And I think it's not just like you said, the data collection. I think a lot of what you do is room setup and helping understand the environment and understanding those pieces that go along with behavior as well. Because do you
Yeah.
do a room setup for like center-based classrooms, you would say, or at least support in that area?
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of brainstorming too, right? Thinking about, especially some of our newer teachers, but just helping them think about like, okay, what's the best way to set up like my teaching, like teacher spot teaching area? And often I feel like we have a lot more kiddos now who are elopers or who maybe like to leave when they're frustrated or they want to avoid some tasks. So thinking about like, okay, how can we set up the room so they don't have like a direct line to exit that doorway, or students in dysregulation sometimes like to move things around for you. So thinking about how do we set those things up so maybe materials aren't as quickly accessible to move. And I think one part, as you were talking about even being in resource more, I think one part of my job that I really enjoy, sometimes it can feel like a lot, but I really enjoy, is being able to go to so many different buildings. We have 9 elementaries and 3 middles and 2 highs. So I get to be in a lot of different places, and I feel like that's super helpful because I can take a lot of ideas and tools from other
Yeah.
people and be like, oh, I just saw this in this building. Like, I think let's try it here. Let's figure out how this can work in your setup and support your students, because um, even some of like the visuals or the environmental setups, or how they're introducing instruction in those ways, it's been really cool to take ideas from other, I shouldn't say take, but to share share ideas from other people, because I feel like we've grown so much too in our center-based classrooms and our students receiving services, that like when I was starting 8 years ago, it was so much smaller and I had connections to those other um, rooms in different buildings. And now that, not that it's lacking, but it's just harder. It's just harder. Everything's busier. There's more kids, there's more needs. So I sometimes I like to feel like I can kind of be that middle ground too, or that, middleman for people to help share ideas across buildings and across different teams.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting point that you say that, and we've talked about that a couple times on the podcast with different people, is this growing number of
Mm-hmm.
center-based, I don't want to say community, that's not what it is, right? But like within our center-based programs, and not just within Lakeville Public Schools, but honestly within districts across Minnesota, we've had this large influx in these center-based kids, and figuring out what the best programming is for them and what that model looks like and how we can implement it the best. Because I will say, and I agree with you, the boom in the center-based classrooms has been large. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of hard to pinpoint where that's coming from. I
Yeah.
think we can all make assumptions, right, of what we think it is. And I
Yeah.
think you could say that too, like from where I started 12 years ago to where things are now, it's completely different, right? And I started as a center-based teacher as well. And
Yeah.
to see what my center-based programming looked like 12 years ago to what we're seeing now, I think is night and day. Like you said, there's more elopement, right? There's more physical aggression. We're seeing more mental health, like that
Mm-hmm.
we've talked about on the podcast as well, of the rising mental health epidemic. What are there any thoughts that you have around that? Not to put you on the spot, Dani, but
Um, I don't know where it comes from. I don't I think there's just so many more needs. And I don't know why. I think, like you said though, like that mental health component, and for whatever reason, I feel like that is ever growing and figuring out. I think there's also a lot more layers to some of our kids, between different diagnoses, different outside diagnoses, different educational categories that they qualify for, the mental health component. Um, I feel like all of those play a part. And I feel like, yeah, some of our kids are coming like so layered that it's really hard sometimes too to figure out like what is the biggest impact to their education. And how can we figure that out and pull it apart to address that priority need first. Because we're
yeah,
addressing all of it, but it's hard to
the
figure out what.
way to explain it though is that layers, right? There are a lot more layers. I think back again, like it was really black and white. It was, oh, that student has ASD. That's what we're going to service. This is what we're going to give. This is what it looks like. And I feel like now, like you're saying, there's so many other things at
Yeah.
play that it's like, which one is it? Is it the chicken before the egg, or the egg before the chicken, or what is it with these kiddos that we really have to take the time to figure out? And I think that's where your role is really good for a lot of teachers, because sometimes when you're in the thick of it,
Hmm.
you don't see
Yeah.
all the other things going on. So do you find yourself in situations like that a lot too, where you're coming in and being more of that observer on the outside and giving the advice that's hard to hear, right? But also that's needed because I think sometimes we get into our habits as teachers. I know that, right? Like it's sometimes it takes someone else to come in.
Yeah. I think I think not the majority. I don't know. Like, I think a lot of my role is that sometimes too, right? Like, I feel like sometimes our case managers who are maybe case managers with resource and have para supporting students, right? Or other staff that they're with more often too, are reporting back to case managers, oh, like this behavior is happening. Or when I give a direction, this is, the response all the time, and case managers aren't seeing that. So I think exactly right, having an extra set of eyes to be like, okay, can you go and see, literacy is hard. Can you go observe during literacy and tell me like, how's it going? Are they interacting? What's the response happening? Um, and just really help to see that from a different lens too. And sometimes it is, and sometimes it's not.
Yeah.
And kids are ever changing in that way too, right? Like sometimes it feels like they know people are there to see them, and then they're like, I'm not going to show you anything. You're here for me. Or they show it all, and then you're like, okay, we have some things that we can adjust and we can work on. Um, and I feel like going back to that data piece too is really helpful in setting up those collection systems, because I really do like collecting the data for people or having them collected and looking at the graphs afterwards to um some people, will say, Dani, this is happening all day long. And I'm like, okay, like let's collect some data and see. And sometimes it is. I'm like, you're right. It is a roller coaster. Like we are up and down in behavior and dysregulation all day long. Um, and sometimes it's not that, but it's like you also, when it's hard, it's really hard. And so like I feel like everybody probably feels kind of exhausted after supporting behavior, because when it's hard, but it's for a shorter amount of time. But because it was so hard and intense, for that time, everybody kind of feels it for the rest of the day then. So I think that's sometimes where the data is really helpful to look at, or to have somebody else look at and then talk through with the case managers of like, yep, like this is where we are, this is what's happening. Or you're right, like this hour is really hard, so like what's happening before, what's happening after, like how can we work with this to maybe adjust some things so maybe it's not as hard, um or not as hard for as long.
Right. Well, I think it's good too because the stress of the job sometimes, like we were talking about, to even set that behavior system up in the data collection is daunting. And I think just taking that one piece off of teachers' plates where you can build that system, give them the collection, and all they have to do is input, or the paras have to input, is
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
then you really can sit back and reflect and say, hey, let's look at this together, like you're saying. And yeah, it is hard all day, or yeah, it is hard for this period of time and it's intense and we need to, we need to tighten that area up. I think a big piece of what you do, and I'm going to brag a little bit on you, Danny, is your ability to really coach and form relationships with staff is huge. And I think that's what makes people really drawn to you in this position, and I mean call you more than maybe maybe others. But I think because you offer such a great collaborative attitude and a really that listening ear for staff, and you're really able to kind of help them feel and seek that validation that they need. And I think it's a really great quality. And I guess for me, and you probably don't even think about it when you do it, but what are some things that you feel like are really good for building relationships with staff? Because I think that, and Dave's talked about it. Dave could talk about it for for hours. um, building leadership, but I think sometimes you just have it and you don't
Yeah.
even know you're doing it, and you're like, Christine, you're putting me on the spot about this, but I there is something that like you do, Danny, like you really have this ability to sit with people and listen and coach,
Yeah.
and they truly actually listen to you because it's not a do this, this, and this, and then you leave.
No. Well, I love that you say that, because sometimes I don't feel it. I feel the connections in the relationships with people, and I value those for all the reasons you said. I think when we can, have those relationships and those connections, it just makes the conversation so much easier. It makes like the planning, the brainstorming, the analyzing, the trial and error, like, oh, that didn't work. How about we try something different? Right. Like it makes it easier. It makes it more comfortable. It makes it um, for staff and for students then too. I don't know that I do anything special. I don't feel like I do. I just like to spend time with people. And I think that's a big one, right? Is sometimes I'm like, I'm just going to show up. And if it's not a good time, like tell me to go. Otherwise, I think sometimes just being present and being able to hang out in their spaces and see what it really looks like beyond this is the student that I need help with. This is the time of day. Um, so I think just being there, being present is super helpful. Um, I mean, I think also making connections in a way that you're not just a coworker. Um, right? We are coworkers, but sped is kind of a unique world some days. And it feels like some days it gets smaller and smaller. So, you know, these people that we see and that we talk to, we really do end up spending a lot of time with them. So knowing them in that way too, I think helps create those relationships. And I think sometimes owning and like acknowledging, like, oh, that didn't work. Like that was my idea and that didn't work out. Like, what do you think? Let's try something different. Because I don't have all the answers. Um, I can brainstorm and I can make lists and I can do all of the things to support anybody. And I think that's a big part too, right? I'm willing to support any ideas. I'm willing to share any ideas and just try them. Um, and also help, yeah, like acknowledge that, yep, this is great, it's working well, or like, nope, it's not, we got to pivot.
Yeah, I think what you said though about just being present in their spaces, right? And just being present. And I know you've heard this and I've heard this, and I think it's so easy as a leader or a person in a leadership role to kind of sit in your office or go somewhere and do your work because obviously we have a lot of work that needs to get done. But
Yeah,
there's a huge, like, something to be said about really just being in spaces with people, whether you're working or whether you're actually like engaging, because then I
yeah.
think that just helps people feel more connected. And I think you do a really good job of that. I mean, I've called you and you're like, I'm just working at, getting some things done. But again, people can see you, right? Like they feel like
Yeah.
they have access to you and they know that you're there. And I think that is a huge thing. And I think not everyone has that because it's easy to kind of get locked away and go hide somewhere or, you know,
We
do
do, our lists are forever growing, right? All of the things to do. I also think being present, like it helps staff, like you're talking about, but I think it also helps students. Sorry, you glitched for a minute.
oh, that's
But it helps
okay.
students, right? Like when I'm present in places, what'd you say?
Oh, I just said I've never had that happen. And then
Oh,
also it's like "Bleh." So I apologize to everybody that's listening if they can hear that when I go back. Maybe it won't, maybe it's just while we're, I don't know. Zoom's crazy. Anyways, I'm sorry to cut you off.
no, that's okay. I was just saying, like, I think it helps for students too, right? Then I get to help build those connections with students. And they're not like, who are you? If something happens and I kind of step in to support. But when I can be there and be present in the good moments too, in the learning, I think that just helps create a positive relationship there too. And I love it, right? We're here for kids, and some days I really miss having my own classroom. But I
Yeah.
also love all of the connections I've been able to make with different staff and students in different buildings.
Yeah. Well, I feel like all the kids know you. I feel like every time I've gotten into a room, they're like they know exactly who you are, whether it's good or bad. They're
Yeah.
excited to see you. So I think you're doing a great job building those positive relationships along with being able to step in on the others. Because I think that probably is a really hard part of your job is you are district wide. So it would be really hard to form relationships like we do in just our small programs that we would see or one or two buildings that you might be in. That would be a really big challenge.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of kids and I do have two others, right? Like you said, there's three of us total in the district, so that helps to kind of break it up a little bit and to be more present in certain buildings at certain times when we can all kind of spread the wealth of it.
Yeah. What is one I don't want to say negative though, because I don't want to talk about if there's like a negative job, but like, what do you think the hardest part of this position is?
Um, so we've been in it for 3 years. Every year's been a little bit different. First, it started with two, but then kind of 1.5 because they got pulled back to part-time teaching. And then last year we had two full times, and then this year three. So it's been a little bit different in a learning curve every year. I think the challenging part this year, at least, is I feel like I wasn't, even though I know that I was present in a lot of buildings and in a lot of places, I feel like I still wanted to do more. And that's just me. I know that about myself. I know that I like to be able to do all of the things. I'm always like, oh yeah, I have time for it all. I'll do all those things. And then I'm like, oh, I'm out of time. Um, so I think that's probably the biggest challenge. I would love to continue helping people learn how to collect data, right? Like to do that and to really analyze it. Um, so that's another like side project of mine that I want to create is like mini videos for people or like kind of like a mini like guidance, step by step. Because I think when people see it, they're like, oh my gosh, yes, this is great. This is wonderful. Like I couldn't have done this on my own. Um, so not that that's hard or a challenge necessarily, but I want to be able to give more to people. Um, because they're all so busy too in the day to day and the instruction and the testing and all of what is not always data collection or
Right.
really analyzing the behavior.
No, I think that's really good. What is one thing that you love about your job? If you had
Uh, if I had to pick one thing,
to,
I even though, like I said before, being district wide can sometimes feel like a lot, I really, really do love that I have the opportunity to be district wide and go to as many different buildings and create those connections and relationships. Like I said, with staff, those are so important because we need to support each other and hold each other up and bring all the joy we can, but also with the kids. I
yeah.
love I love being to be in so many different buildings and see all the different things because everybody's a little different and it's so fun to still learn. Okay, that was like three things. Relationships with people, relationships with kids, and keep learning from all of them.
I mean, you kind of made it into one, so we're gonna count it as one. But that was good. I think the hard it's for the kids, and I love that you say that. And I think we've lost sight of that in some places, and I've talked about that before. And this is truly about the kids. And yeah, this is a job that takes people, and we need the people to do the job. And obviously, we want the people to be happy doing the job. But I think
Yeah,
at all of it, we're not here to make the people happy. We're here to serve the students, right? And give them the best quality services that we can with what we're able to give, right? Because we can't always, and who was it? Carol makes fun of me all the time. Carol, see, when I was like, I'm like, I can't give the Cadillac of services. Um, it's such an old school thing to say. And one of my former directors used to say that all the time. Like, we're not offering the Cadillac, Christine. We're offering the Chevy because that's what we have. And I'm like, no, I understand. And really giving what we can to the kids at the end of the day. Because I think, yes, it's good to support the people and the
yeah,
teachers. We need them, but I'm in it for the kids. I know you're in it for the kids and what we can do to, make their lives better.
yeah,
And their school experience better while they're with us.
yeah. Well,
So
that's why we all got into it in the first place, right? Because we love to we love the kids and we love to teach the kids. We love to see them grow. Um, so I think helping keep that at the forefront and like, yeah, how can we do that? Is important.
it is. That's a good question though. Like moving forward with the teacher
Yeah,
shortage, where education is and what it looks like, and it's definitely something that I think
it's getting
now
tricky.
is getting tricky. It is.
Mhm.
This job is tricky.
Yeah, but we love it. We keep showing up.
You keep making spreadsheets, Dani. It's great.
I do. I do. I love the spreadsheets. I really do.
You do. You do a great job. Well, if you have any questions for Dani, obviously drop them below in the comments. You can reach out to me if you want to learn more about what her job looks like, what she does, if that's something you're thinking about for your district yourself.
Yeah.
Any questions around the amazing data collection systems and sheets that she makes. I can't answer them, but I can ask Dani
Mhm.
because she can make them so fast and maybe she'll teach me one day. I don't
I will.
know.
I'll teach everybody one day. Well, I'll teach some people one day and they can keep teaching.
It's like, that's like teaching Carol. Poor Carol. Carol, where are you? Carol, we need to send them to you because we love to make sheets for you.
I, yes, they're so helpful. They're so helpful.
They are. They're super helpful.
Yeah.
So happy you could come on today. See, it's quick. It's easy. Everybody's always so nervous. And I get
It's
it. I understand. My first one, I was
so out of
like,
my comfort zone, but I am happy.
hard. It's so good, but it goes by fast
It does.
and we get things done. So I'm happy you came today. I appreciate you being here and I
Yeah.
hope you come back.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks, Dani.
Bye.
Bye.